passing up the opportunity to make
Dude, I have to
history.
edit all this.
I just choose to
I have to edit all of this
protest when he
shit
can't
out.
claim.
Yes.
Because I think that he's so narcissistic that he just views anybody that knows as being like somebody that likes him.
I don't know, man. Whenever like somebody in the crowd at like his rallies, he just making a funny face.
Yeah, he gets salty over this dumbest shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's true. I prefer marching for like women's rights or, you know, rights to do what we want with our bodies.
He's also trying to prove that.
I know.
Yeah.
But I just choose to protest on other days. When I
still go with the free the nipple, man.
Yeah, there probably is gonna be a
Yo, bro. Free the nips.
Or if, like, when you go to like a women's march, like
Free the nipples.
Okay, I guess who's coming to the world with the train. Who wants to get up
So he can stay home so we can't.
for him? We finally did it! Yes!
Alright, here comes David. Wow.
Hey, don't take it.
This was from the first chapter that we did. This is from chapter 8. Who else needed copies of the worksheet? What, Matt? Okay. And Brennan, you have everything that you needed?
Yeah, I do believe so.
Carissa, did I give you the symbolism packet?
Oh, yeah, I did.
Yes?
Did anyone do the
And
packet?
that goes through chapter 10.
This is Broadway, right? What? Those true customers?
They're gonna be destroying property out there.
A lot of people are gonna get arrested.
Amy,
Yep.
may or may not have
Like,
lost
that's Broadway.
Stop, bitch.
my paper.
Oh,
Like, this is right when we're coming, when I pick you guys up.
I'm so dumb.
So needs to come here.
Oh, is this the one?
No, they're
Or is it yours?
I just saw there.
I don't know.
And like, you know how we like,
No, we
like,
don't use
yeah.
There's a phone.
No, but it's all
I don't know.
So what?
I wasn't
It's all right.
expecting Broadway to be blocked out, but what did it mean that was supposed to be blocked out? Oh.
see, I don't have to do anything target based. I just stab you.
It's really good here, you said stuff, but if they're your friends, tell them to give me the hookup. And portions aren't big, like they're actual portions.
Or a pen.
Right.
Literally writing utensils.
Kaylee, for a second, I thought you meant no shit.
Yes.
I was like,
Thanks.
There was one Anna was wearing like pants like that. It's two of them. I was like, ooh. There was one time there was a crossing guard that was at that one like church school kind of by Xavier's house, and yeah, it's like a guard school or some shit. There was a woman that was a crossing guard and she had like blue leggings on. It was good.
So these are just like checking your understanding questions, and then there are more right. Okay, so read through chapter 14, which I think you're kind of ahead of class.
Oh my gosh, check that log in.
Yep, so that's
Yeah.
Oh my god. I leveled up. Which means don't drop it.
Who needs the symbolism packet? Do you guys need the symbolism packets?
Nope.
Brennan?
Probably.
Alright. We are reading today chapters 9 and 10 so we can finish that packet from yesterday. I quickly have to go talk to someone so I can either turn on while I am away, which should only take a few minutes, the audiobook, unless someone is willing to volunteer to read aloud to the class.
Starbucks. Starbucks.
I thought you were ahead.
You're so cute.
You guys want the audiobook?
Yeah.
By the way, I think it's your computer. Because I'm letting you turn on another camera.
Okay. Yeah, she gave me a different password. Make sure you guys are listening. Yesterday was kind of rough. Just listening. And I'll be right back. I know it's easier to listen to me.
I don't know who this is.
Who?
Dear Charles. Charles Baker Harris.
That's a good question.
Amy, who's Charles Baker Harris? Who's Dill? Who's Dill? Isn't he?
He's their friend.
Oh, Jem's friend.
Mm-hmm.
Just take that back, right? It's over. Get back in Cecil.
Can't pay.
Just take that back, boy. Hey! I was just trying to pry open the right here, the chapter 9. Here. You can take that back, boy. This order, given by me to Cecil Jacobs, was the beginning of a rather thin time for Jem and me. My fists were clenched, and I was ready to let fly. Atticus had promised me he would wear me out if he ever heard of me fighting anymore. I was far too old, too big for such childish things, and the sooner I learned to hold it in, the better off everybody would be. I soon forgot. Cecil Jacobs made me forget. He had announced at school, in the schoolyard, the day before, that Scout Finch's dad defended niggers. I denied it, but told Jem. What do you mean saying that? I asked. Nothing, said Jem. Ask Atticus, he'll tell you. Do you defend niggers, Atticus? I asked him that evening. Of course I do. Don't say nigger, Scout. That's common. That means only ignorant people say it. It's what everybody at school says. From now on, it'll be everybody less one. Well, if you don't want me to grow up talking that way, why do you send me to school? My father looked at me mildly, amusement in his eyes. Despite our compromise, my campaign to avoid school had continued in one form or another since my first day's dosing. The beginning of last September had brought on sinking spills, dizziness, and mild gastric complaints, stomach problems. She's trying to get out of school. I went so far as to pay a nickel for the privilege of rubbing my head against the head of Miss Rachel's cook's son, who was afflicted with a tremendous ringworm. It didn't take. But I was worrying another bone. Do all the lawyers defend Negroes, Atticus? Of course they do, Scout. Then why did Cecil say you defended niggers? He made it sound like you were running a still. That's a whiskey still. Atticus sighed. I'm simply defending a Negro. His name's Tom Robinson. He lived in that little settlement beyond the town dump. He's a member of Calpurnia's church, and Carol knows him, his family well. She says they're clean living folks. Scout, you aren't old enough to understand some things yet, but there's been some high talk around town to the effect that I shouldn't do much about defending this man. It's a peculiar case. It won't come to trial until summer session. John Taylor was kind enough to give us a postponement. If you shouldn't be defending him, then why are you doing it? For a number of reasons, said Atticus. The main one is, if I didn't, I couldn't hold up my head in town. I couldn't represent this country in the legislature, this county in the legislature. I couldn't even tell you or Jem not to do something again. You mean if you didn't defend that man, Jem and me wouldn't have to mind you anymore? That's about right. Why? Because I could never ask you to mind me again. Scout, simply by the nature of the work, every lawyer gets at least one case in his lifetime that affects him personally. This one's mine, I guess. You might hear some ugly talk about it at school, but do one thing for me if you will. Just hold your head high and keep those fists down. No matter what anybody else says to you, don't you let them get your goat. Try fighting with your head for a change. It's a good one, even if it does resist learning. Atticus, are we going to win it? No, honey. Then why? Simply because we were licked 100 years before we started. There's no reason for us not to try but to win. Atticus said, you sound like Cousin Ike Finch. I said, Cousin Ike Finch was Macomb County's sole surviving Confederate veteran. He wore a General Hood type beard of which he was inordinately named. He really liked that. He was proud of it. At least once a year, Atticus, Jem, and I called on him, and I would have to kiss him. It was horrible. Jem and I would listen respectfully to Atticus, and Cousin Ike rehash the war. Tell you, Atticus, Cousin Ike would say, the Missouri Compromise was what licked us. If I had to go through it again, I'd walk every step of the way there and every step back, just like I did before. And furthermore, we'd whip him this time. Now, in 1864, when Stonewall Jackson came round by, I beg your pardon, young folks. Old Blue Light was in heaven then. God rest his saintly brow. Come here, Scout, said Atticus. I crawled into his lap and tucked my head under his chin. He put his arm and rocked me up. It's different this time, said Atticus. Oh, he said. This time, we aren't fighting the Yankees. We're fighting our friends. But remember this, no matter how bitter things get, they're still our friends. And this is still our hope. With this in mind, I faced Cecil Jacobs in the schoolyard the next day. You gonna take that back, boy? You gotta make me first, he yelled. My folks said your daddy was a disgrace, and that nigger ought to hang from the water tank. I drew a bead on him, remembered what Atticus had said, and dropped my fists and walked away. Scout's a coward! Ringing in my ears. It was the first time I ever walked away from the fight. Somehow, if I fought Cecil, I would let Atticus down. Atticus so rarely asked Jem and me to do something for him. I could take being called a coward. I felt extremely noble for having remembered and remained noble for 3 weeks. Then Christmas came, and disaster struck. Jem and I viewed Christmas with mixed feelings. The good side was the tree and Uncle Jack Finch. Every Christmas Eve day, we met Uncle Jack at Macomb Junction, and he would spend a week with us. A flip of the coin revealed the uncompromising lineaments of Aunt Alexandra and Francis. I suppose I should include Uncle Jim, Aunt Alexandra's husband, but as he never spoke a word to me in my life except to say, "Get off the fence," once, I never saw any reason to take notice of him. Neither did Aunt Alexandra. This is her husband. Long ago, in a burst of friendliness, Auntie and Uncle Jimmy produced a son named Henry. It's an interesting euphemism. A burst of friendliness. Who left home as soon as he was humanly possible, married, and produced Francis. Henry and his wife deposited Francis at his grandparents' every Christmas, then pursued their own pleasures. No amount of sign could induce Atticus to let us spend Christmas Day at home. We went to Finch's Landing every Christmas in my memory. The fact that Annie was a good cook was some compensation for being forced to spend a religious holiday with Francis Hancock. This is her cousin. He was a year older than I, and I avoided him on principle. He enjoyed everything I disapproved of, and disliked my ingenious diversions for bloody deeds. Aunt Alexandra was Atticus' sister, who when Jem told me about changelings and siblings, I decided that she had been swapped at birth, that my grandparents had perhaps received a Crawford instead of a Finch, so she's kind of different. Had I ever harbored the mystical notions about mountains that seem to obsess lawyers and judges? Aunt Alexandra would have been analogous to Mount Everest. Would have been like Mount Everest. Throughout my early life, she was cold and bare. When Uncle Jack jumped down from the train Christmas Day, we had to wait for the porter to hand him 2 long packages. Jim and I always thought it funny when Uncle Jack had a kiss on the cheek. They were the only 2 men we ever saw kiss each other. Uncle Jack shook hands with Jim and swung me high, but not high enough. Uncle Jack was a head shorter than Agnes, the baby of the family. He was younger than Aunt Alexandra. He and Auntie looked alike, but Uncle Jack made better use of his face. We were never wary of his sharp nose and chin. He's the funny one. He was one of the few men of science who never terrified me, probably because he never behaved like a doctor. Whenever he performed a minor service for Jem and me, as removing a splinter from a foot, he would tell us exactly what he was going to do, give us an estimation of how much it would hurt, and explain the use of any taunts he employed. One Christmas I lurked in the corners, nursing a twisted splinter in my foot, permitting no one to come near me. When Uncle Jack caught me, he kept me laughing about a preacher who hated going to church so much that every day he stood at his gate in his dressing gown, smoking a hookah, and delivering 5-minute sermons to any passerby who desired spiritual company. I interrupted to make Uncle Jack let me know when he would pull it out, but he held up a bloody splinter and a pair of tweezers and said he yanked it out while I was laughing. That was what was known as relativity. "What's in those packages?" I asked him, pointing to the long, thin parcels the porter had given him.